Coming up in our newscast tonight. The U.S. Federal Reserve raises its key interest rate for the fourth time this year. South Korea's financial authorities quickly respond by convening emergency meetings to monitor the financial markets and be prepared for possible repercussions. Seoul's government rolls out more measures to support self-employed and small businesses. They include plans to transform commercial districts where such businesses are concentrated into new composite spaces and introducing a new payment system to cut transaction fees. U.S. Special Envoy on North Korea Stephen Biegun is visiting South Korea to discuss with his counterpart in Seoul various issues related to Pyongyang's denuclearization. Biegun also takes a trip to the Demilitarized Zone to familiarize himself with the fresh mood of the border area amid east tensions. News Center begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang News Center. Welcome to our program. I'm Daniel Chang. The U.S. Federal Reserve raised its key interest rate by a quarter point on Wednesday, the fourth hike this year, putting the target range for its benchmark funds rate to a range between 2.25 and 2.5%. Seoul's financial authorities held emergency meetings to monitor the markets and brace for possible volatility. Kim Hye-sung starts us off.
Following the Fed's rate hike, South Korea's economic policymakers vowed to work together closely and strengthen the monitoring of financial markets. Officials from the Finance Ministry and the Bank of Korea on Thursday examined the effect the Fed's rate decision might have on global markets, as well as in domestic financial and foreign exchange markets. U.S. rates are now 75 basis points higher than Korea's, but citing South Korea's strong economic fundamentals, First Vice Minister of the Economy and Finance Lee Ho-seung said the domestic financial market can withstand the rate difference and that the government will strengthen financial institutions' risk management and run a contingency plan if there's an increase in financial market volatility. As of market close Thursday, Korea's benchmark Kospi had fallen 0.9% and the second-tier Kosdaq had shed 0.6%. For the chief of Korea's central bank, however, the concern was not the widely expected December rate hike, but the pace of rate hikes next year, which the chair of the Fed addressed in his announcement.
And now I think it is more likely that the economy will grow in a way that will call for 2 interest rate increases over the course of next year.
That's one fewer than the 3 rate hikes the Fed projected back in September. Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol said the slower rate hikes by the Fed give global central banks more room to maneuver in terms of monetary policy, but that they also mean slower U.S. growth for 2019 and said he'll consider a range of risk factors like global growth and Korea's record high $1.3 trillion household debt when making the bank's rate decisions next year. Kim Hye-sung, Arirang News.
More than 20% of South Koreans with jobs are self-employed. To improve the business environment for these people, the government rolled out several measures to lessen the burden caused by the minimum wage hike. More such steps are announced today, including the revitalization of rundown areas in city centers. Ko Ryun-hee explains how they would work.
President Moon Jae-in's administration has taken a range of measures to help the self-employed as part of building what it calls an inclusive nation. And it announced on Thursday that by 2022, 30 commercial districts in old downtown areas where self-employed businesses are concentrated will be transformed into new composite spaces where people can enjoy shopping and culture. The specific locations of these 30 areas have not been decided yet, but some of them are in the cities of Daegu and Suwon. Speaking to reporters on Thursday in Seoul, the Minister of SMEs and Startups, Hong Jong-ak, said the measure includes supporting traditional markets by improving their facilities, for instance, or adding more space for parking. Another main issue is revitalizing local economies. The Ministry of SMEs says it will issue more gift certificates that can be used in traditional markets or small and mid-sized businesses. One example is the Onduri gift certificate. For that one in particular, the ministry aims to issue around $8.9 billion worth of them by 2022, and it will encourage public institutions to buy more of them. These measures are also about creating a stronger social safety net. The government will review whether it can make it easier for the self-employed to get employment insurance. Plus, for the self-employed who are worried about their overdue debts, the government plans to increase the percentage of people eligible for debt forgiveness, depending on their financial condition. And for people who want to start their own businesses, the government aims to provide vocational training for 20,000 people by 2022. 고르니, Arirang News.
Small shops and franchise stores spend a sizable amount of their earnings on card processing fees. To help them out, the Seoul City government launched a new mobile payment platform that will waive transaction fees for such businesses. Woo Soo-young introduces to us the ZeroPay system.
Seoul Metropolitan Government has launched a trial run of its ZeroPay mobile platform across hundreds of local shops and public facilities on Thursday. The mobile payment system aims to cut transaction fees for small business owners while providing shoppers with tax incentives. Shoppers can now scan the ZeroPay QR code at a store and enter the amount they have to pay, which will go straight out of their bank accounts. A total of 24 mainstream banks and payment networks have joined the venture, adding the ZeroPay feature to their respective smartphone payment apps. The platform charges little to no transaction fees depending on the store's annual sales revenue. Businesses making less than $710,000 of sales revenue a year are exempt from transaction fees, while those with sales revenue above that pay between 0.3% and 0.5%. No transfer fees will be given to the banks. These conditions are expected to help some 660,000 small business owners in Seoul, who spend between 30% to 50% of their profit on card transaction fees.
Nearly 99% of our customers pay with card, and the transaction fees take a huge toll on our income. It's about 1.4% for credit cards right now. We expect the ZeroPay system will help us reduce costs substantially.
To encourage locals to use the system, the city will allow tax deductions of 40% on ZeroPay purchases when customers file their annual income tax returns. This compares to the 15% rate for credit cards. However, there are some concerns over whether the system will prove effective.
It's unclear whether consumers will choose to use ZeroPay. For instance, similar fintech like Samsung Pay and Kakao Pay haven't been used as much as expected. Most consumers still prefer to pay with credit card, even though debit cards offer a higher 30% tax deduction. Also, ZeroPay lacks the benefits or installment features that credit cards have, meaning spending could be limited.
Seoul plans to expand the number of affiliated merchants as well as introduce contactless payment next year. Other parts of the country will also begin adopting the system. Whether ZeroPay will take off remains to be seen, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on as it takes us further beyond the boundaries of traditional network payment systems. Woo Soo-young, Arirang News.
President Moon Jae-in continues a series of meetings with his top officials from various ministries. Today, he met with the Defense Ministry, focusing on military readiness and reform, then sat down with the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family to talk about building a more inclusive society. Hwang Ho-jun brings us the highlights from those sessions.
Despite the peaceful mood between the two Koreas this past year, South Korea's commander-in-chief urged the Ministry of Defense not to rest on its laurels until the peace process is complete.
내년에는 흔들리지 않는 항구적인 평화를 정착해야 합니다. 평화는 우리 힘이 튼튼할 때 지속될 수 있습니다. 2019년 한반도 평화 시대로 나아가는데 우리 군이 강력한 안보 태세로 뒷받침해 주시기 바랍니다.
President Moon Jae-in was speaking in his policy briefing for 2019 with the Defense Ministry. He praised the many changes that have happened with North Korea in the space of just a year, specifically referring to the September 19th Inter-Korean Military Agreement to cease all military hostilities. According to the defense minister's press briefing after the event, President Moon also ordered the ministry to keep the people better informed about the ways South Korea's armed forces are continually developing and implementing core technologies of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, including, but not limited to, wearable technologies and drones. The Defense Ministry's 5-point policy plan for 2019 was also shared. 1. Establishing a strong defense posture against all known security threats. 2. Continuing to build trust between the two Koreas. 3. Reforming the military. 4. Preparing for the early transfer of wartime operational control from Washington to Seoul. And finally, cultivating a morale-boosting military culture to win the people's trust. Later in the afternoon, President Moon met with the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family, and he stressed the significance of celebrating diversity.
튼튼한 안보만큼이나 중요한 것이 우리 사회의 내적 역량입니다. 그 사회가 얼마나 강하고 성숙한지는 다양성을 존중하고 포용하는 정도로 가늠할 수 있습니다.
During the meeting, the ministry said it plans to educate the next generation on gender equality and diversity, to increase financial support for single parents, and to deal with logistical and/or legal issues that might shame non-traditional families. The ministry says it will also cultivate a society that will protect and support teenagers. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
Annual joint military exercises with the U.S. will be scaled down from next year. Defense Chief Chung Kyung-do told reporters the Allies' annual springtime full legal military drills, a major field training exercise, is expected to be reduced to battalion or smaller unit levels. But the nation's biannual joint command post drills with Washington, conducted once every 6 months, will still take place, although the names Key Resolve and Freedom Guardian could be changed. Meanwhile, the two sides will conduct their first verification exercise on Seoul's operational capability to lead command control as part of preparing for the transfer of wartime operational control to Seoul during their joint military exercise in August. The Moon administration has released its overall strategy for national security, and the focus is protecting South Koreans and establishing peace on the peninsula. The booklet from the top office covers the administration's policy direction on diplomacy, unification, and defense. It reflects the drastically shifting security environment in the region, emphasizing 3 goals: a peaceful resolution to the North Korea nuclear issue, contributing to world peace, and keeping Korean citizens safe. It is the 4th such strategy from a South Korean administration. The U.S. Special Envoy for North Korea was at the Demilitarized Zone today to see for himself how much the border area has changed since Seoul and Pyongyang started reducing military tensions there. Throughout this 4-day visit to the nation, Stephen Biegun will also meet with local officials to discuss various matters related to the regime. Here's Park Hee-jun with the details.
U.S. Special Representative for North Korea Stephen Biegun has visited the truce village of Panmunjom for the first time. According to an official at Seoul's foreign ministry, he went to see firsthand what the two Koreas have done to disarm the joint security area as agreed at their summit in September. Panmunjom is often used for diplomacy between the U.S. and North Korea, but Biegun did not meet with any North Koreans this time. The ministry official also says that later in the evening, Biegun is scheduled to attend a brief bilateral meeting and a dinner banquet with his South Korean counterpart, Special Representative for Korean Peninsula Peace and Security Affairs Lee Do-hoon. Biegun's 5th visit to Seoul comes amid a months-long stalemate in the nuclearization talks between Pyongyang and Washington. And with his visit comes an apparent gesture of goodwill, showing that the U.S. is still committed to dialogue. Upon his arrival in Korea on Wednesday, Biegun said the U.S. will review its policy on humanitarian aid for North Korea. And he said it will also consider allowing American citizens to travel to the north to participate in and monitor the aid programs. On Friday, the U.S. and South Korea will hold the second meeting of their working group on North Korea. The agenda will include denuclearization and various issues concerning inter-Korean cooperation projects. That includes a ceremony slated for December 26th, in which the two Koreas will symbolically break ground on work to reconnect their railways and roads. One issue there is the possibility the event could violate sanctions. Also on Friday, Biegun will stop by the Blue House and the Unification Ministry. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
It's been almost 100 days since Seoul and Pyongyang opened a joint liaison office in North Korea's border town of Kaesong. The deputy minister of the office, Kim Chang-soo, told reporters there's been almost 300 meetings in total between officials from both sides. They will sit down for talks regularly every morning and afternoon, and director-level figures also have met dozens of times. The two Koreas exchanged a total of 173 documents through the joint liaison office. The deputy minister added South and North will work to develop the office into resident representative offices in each other's capitals in the future. The country's 4 major taxi unions staged a large-scale rally in front of the National Assembly to protest against the launch of a carpool service. It means greater convenience for commuters, but cab drivers believe the new services will do more harm than good. Yoon Jung-min delves deeper to cover both sides of the story.
Hundreds of taxi drivers all across Korea went on a 24-hour strike on Thursday morning and staged a massive rally in Seoul to protest against Kakao Mobility's move to launch a carpool or ride-sharing service. The country's 4 major taxi labor unions staged their 3rd large-scale rally at 2 p.m. in front of the National Assembly. Some roads in the capital, including 의사당대로 in front of the National Assembly, were blocked. The Seoul government put on more subways and buses during commuting hours to minimize traffic congestion. The move by the government and the carpool business to launch the ride-sharing service has been causing a strong backlash from taxi drivers who claim their livelihoods will be threatened if the service opens. The current transportation law allows the commercial use of private vehicles, but only during commuting hours.
Originally, the carpool service was allowed for good purposes, but it started to expand as a business to pursue profits. We call for an abolishment of this. We are also worried about possible harm for citizens due to unprofessional drivers.
This month, a 57-year-old taxi driver burned himself to death to protest against the service. Kakao Mobility originally planned to launch their business this week, but announced they would delay it. The government and the ruling party have set up a dialogue body, including representatives of the 4 taxi unions and the carpool business, to try to resolve the conflict. Some citizens, on the other hand, have criticized the protest, claiming the car-sharing service will increase convenience for citizens and boost the shared economy.
I understand the difficult situation of taxi drivers, but this is also part of the market system. As a citizen, I expect this new system or shared economy will allow new, better service.
Despite the government's attempt to solve the conflict through dialogue, it is not likely to be quick or easy for the taxi and carpool industries to reach a consensus. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Statistics Korea, the Financial Supervisory Service, and the nation's central bank released their report on household finance and welfare research results. One thing clearly stood out: changes in relative poverty rate in the year 2017. Hong Yu breaks down the numbers for us.
After maintaining an upward trend for 2 years, relative poverty rate in South Korea has finally decreased in 2017. Relative poverty refers to household incomes that are a certain percentage below the median incomes. In 2017, the country's relative poverty rate decreased by 0.2% from 17.6%. This is the lowest figure registered since the data started being gathered in 2011. The average annual income of the poor strata was around $11,000, which means that 17.4% of the entire population had to live off such amount of income. Compared to other OECD member states, the rate is still high. South Korea is the member with the 3rd highest relative poverty rate. The highest rate was observed in the U.S. with 17.8%, followed by Israel. The report announced by Statistics Korea shows that people in the poor bracket earned more profit last year, but it also showed a widening gap in terms of income. South Korea faced the worst income inequality after 2014, with those classified as the richest people of the nation earning 7 times more than those in the average and poor brackets. Last year's income distribution was still relatively unfair as well, ending up top 5 among the OECD member states to have an unfair income distribution. Hong Yu, Arirang News.
The Economic, Social and Labor Council, a presidential advisory body, launched a special committee to try and reach a consensus over the maximum weekly working hours. The Committee for Improving Working Hours is tasked with helping labor groups, management groups, and the government agree on how to adjust a planned flexible work hour system, which limits the average maximum weekly work hours to 52 over a 3-month period. The committee will also discuss whether to prolong the grace period for companies to implement the shortened work week. Initially, starting next year, employers of companies with 300 or more workers that violate the weekly cap could face up to 2 years in jail or fines of more than $17,000. Starting in July, lung cancer will be added to the national cancer screenings. According to the Ministry of Health and Welfare, lung cancer screenings will be provided for those aged 54 and over and those who have been smoking at least one pack of cigarettes a day for more than 30 years. Lung cancer will be the 6th type of cancer screened in Korea. Currently, stomach, liver, colorectal, breast, and cervical cancers are screened. Also, in order to detect and treat depression among the younger generation, a depression test will be conducted for those aged between 20 and 30 years old. In late November, a traditional Korean form of wrestling called shirim was added to UNESCO's list of intangible cultural assets. Today, the Cultural and Heritage Administration and the Korean Shirim Association held a ceremony to celebrate its listing. Choi Seong sheds light on the significance of earning this international recognition.
It starts with a mesmerizing traditional Korean drum dance. South Korea's Cultural Heritage Administration and the Korea Shirim Association brought people together to celebrate the first UNESCO cultural heritage shared by two countries, South and North Korea. As a sport, shirim has been around in Korea since the 4th century. Each wrestler holds onto a belt called sappa that wraps around the waist and thighs, and relies on strength and technique to push their opponent off balance. The winner is the wrestler who brings any part of their opponent's body above the knee to the ground. The national competition shirim was first televised across the country in 1972. That was also when the large cash prize was introduced. The national sport had its heyday in the 1980s, but its popularity later waned for several reasons, including the disintegration of professional teams, a lack of awareness of the sport in secondary schools, and the sport's complicated rules. The Korea Shirim Association has been one of many trying to revive the tradition. The association has been hosting the Korea Shirim Festival since 2008, and at the most recent edition in November, wrestlers also came from other countries, including Spain and Russia. In return, the Korean wrestlers went to Spain to take part in the traditional wrestling of the Canary Islands, known as Lucha Canaria. There, Korea and Spain agreed to make the cultural exchange an annual event. To make shirim more widely known, the first step is to unify the rules and traditions in both South and North Korea.
UNESCO listing shirim for both South and North Korea is a chance to settle on rules and styles for the sport, which could allow the tradition to spread.
So with the UNESCO listing, shirim might be one step closer to its former glory. Choi Seong, Arirang News.
Time to turn to Michelle Bach at the Weather Center for the updates you need. Michelle, we've been under thick layers of dusty air for the whole week now. Any signs of improvements?
Well, Daniel, we'll have to bear with it for a couple more days as we are experiencing an unseasonably mild weather. Now, in fact, the southern regions are being under worse air conditions this winter and currently being issued with ultrafine dust advisories. Now, dusty conditions will carry on the nation, and although Jeju Island will get some rain tomorrow, highs will rise into the teens along with Beijing and Tokyo. The morning temperatures aren't too bad either, about 4 to 6 degrees warmer than the norms. Seoul will begin at 1 degree Celsius, Gwangju at 4, while Busan and Jeju are a lot warmer at 8 and 11 degrees. The daytime highs in Seoul will top out to 9 degrees tomorrow, while most other regions will even see the highs in the mid-teens. The mercury will remain this warm throughout the whole weekend, and as we approach Christmas next week, the dust will start to clear as we get the cold weather back into the nation. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That's all we have for you on tonight's edition of Arirang News Center, wherever you may be tuning in from. Thanks for staying with us.